Hi, I'm Danny Poulos from the elite lending team at FEMBI Mortgage, and thanks for joining us today on Real Estate Insiders. We've got two phenomenal guests. First, we're going to spend time with Robert and Cece Mavis. They're professional photographers, and they specialize in real estate photography, and they've got some tips that you're really going to make great use of. Then we're going to follow that with David Steinfeld. He's a business litigator, but also spends a lot of time in real estate transactions and issues. And he's also going to give us some great tips on how you can keep yourself out of court if you're in the real estate business. So stick with us, and we'll see you in a moment. Hi, and thanks for coming back with us at Real Estate Insiders. Now we're joined by David Steinfeld. If I started listing his credentials, the show would be over before I got done. So I will at least tell you that he is one of only 225 board-certified business litigators in the state of Florida, and we're talking about over 100,000 attorneys. That being said, I'll let David tell us a little more about himself, and then we'll get right into it.
Thank you, Danny. I am board-certified business litigation attorney. I am also AV preeminent rated by Martindale-Hubbell, which is a nationwide attorney rating service. That's peer review. That's from lawyers and judges. I'm also a two-time winner of the Florida Legal Elite from Florida Trend Magazine for 2012 and 2013. I'm very proud of that. And I was just recently elected to the North County section of the Palm Beach County Bar, to the Board of Directors there.
I feel like I should give it one of these.
Every time I see this stuff in paper and see it in writing too, I'm amazed at it myself. It's
well, the thing we're going to talk about today is not just business litigation, but how it affects the real estate market and people in it. So we're going to talk about, all realtors have their ethics training and their legal training. It's part of continued education and it's part of licensing. So pretty much they know what they're supposed to do and not supposed to do. But you and I both know that there's still court cases, right?
We still have cases in court, so apparently there's a disconnect somewhere.
Well, if you're doing everything right, before we get into specifics, if you're doing everything right, how could you end up in court?
Well, you could still be a witness. Even as a real estate broker, you could still wind up being a witness in a dispute between a buyer and a seller. And you're a material witness because they want to know who provided the information, particularly on the FAR disclosure form. So you could wind up being not dragged into the suit, but you could wind up being part of a lawsuit, even though you're not a party, meaning a plaintiff or a defendant.
And you've explained to me before that even if you do everything right, it doesn't keep someone from suing you, right?
Yeah, the quote-unquote beauty of our system, if you will, to use that term facetiously, is that our legal system, unlike other countries, is very open, and it's intentionally designed like that. We do not have people standing at the courthouse doors in this country that say, you can come in, you can't come in, I don't think you have a good lawsuit, you have a good lawsuit. So therefore, our system allows anyone to sue anyone for anything. That's how it's designed, and it's open access to the court system. Now, there might be ramifications. If I was to sue you and make up something completely false and say that Danny disparaged me on this TV show, then that may be a frivolous lawsuit, and I may wind up having to pay your attorney's fees for it or suffer some other penalty to the court system. But the initial filing of the suit, the opening of the suit, requires you to defend it, and there's a good and there's a bad.
All right. So that being said, a realtor or a real estate broker does everything they're supposed to do. They follow all the rules. They're educated. How could they still end up in court? Let's go over some examples of typical situations where an agent or broker could end up in court whether they like it or not.
Okay. I would say there's probably two scenarios that you can see that happening. The first scenario would be one where the broker by herself winds up buying property, and let's say it's a scenario where the broker has an exclusive listing on a property or has an exclusive arrangement with you, for example, and I'm the broker and I'm going to take you out and show you properties, and you decide not to buy a particular piece of property because you can't afford it. Let's put the economics in the center.
So you showed it to me. I said, it's not for me. I don't have that kind of money.
Yeah, you've inherited some money. You're looking to buy some commercial property for investment. You want to build it out, rent it out, whatever. But you don't have the amount. You've got $200,000, and the seller wants $500,000, $750,000. You can't even come close, and you're not going to leverage any money. You're not going to get a loan for it. So you're not even economically in the market. You
and if I make an offer for $200,000, it's going to be ignored anyway, right?
Absolutely, outright rejected. So then I turn around as the broker and I say, I think I could flip this property. So I say to you, you can't touch this property, but would you mind, now that we've seen it, would you mind, since we've concluded our relationship, if I go ahead and I put an offer in on it, and you say no?
Well,
go ahead, Dave.
In my position, I had no reason to think there's anything wrong with that.
Sure, go ahead, Dave. And I put an offer on it, I contract it, and then I turn around and I sell it to someone else, and I make a profit on it. Then you say, hey, you made a profit, and that's not fair. I should have that profit. Now
somebody else made money.
That right there. So have I done anything wrong? No, probably not. Our relationship was concluded. I have every right. I have your approval and your blessing to put the contract on the property. But you just don't like the fact afterwards that I somehow managed to flip the property and make money on it, and I didn't guide you or tell you should have taken out a loan or liquidated your 401k and offered more and flipped it and everything. You feel like you were cheated.
So yeah, in my mind, I guess I'm thinking, and probably incorrectly, boy, I could have done that. Or David could have shown me how to do that. He knew all along. He thought it was a good deal, and he kept it for himself. Ignoring the conversation we just had. I'm not interested. Go ahead, Dave.
I'm bad like that, Danny. I'll do that to you.
Right. Well, also you say you bought the property for a lot more money that I wasn't in a position to do.
Right.
So I can still sue you.
Yeah. And now, will you win on that lawsuit? We don't know. More than likely not. A case that I've done that was similar to that, no. The person who sued the broker or their former broker did not win, but every case is different. You can't parallel them because all the facts are different.
Well, how did you protect yourself in the case?
I wasn't the broker.
No, how did the broker protect themselves? What's the important thing to...
Documentation, Danny.
Gotcha.
Documentation is the absolute key, and back then, it wasn't as easy as it is now with electronic mechanisms. Right. Back then, it was, well, here's my notes that I made. So now you're presenting it to you, the members of the jury, and saying, do you believe this? Did the broker really make the notes back then, or did the broker make the notes after when he or she was sued? And how can you validate this stuff? How can you sort of cross-connect it to something else and show when it was made? Now, in the more quote-unquote modern era that we're in, we look at a timestamp on an email,
right.
Or you look at an entry on an electronic calendar on your phone and say, here's when this occurs, here's when that occurred. And what I would simply do is after I spoke to you about the deal, I would email you and say, Danny, this just recaps our conversation. I really appreciated your business. I wish you the best, and I'm very happy that you don't have any difficulty with me putting an offer on that property. If you have other needs in the future for real estate, come talk to me. And you email back saying, Dave, good luck, I wish you the best, and I hope you find a buyer for that property. What do you think a jury is going to do looking at that blown up to be 4 feet by 3 feet in front of their face, and you saying, well, I never said that? There it is in black and white.
So your advice would be to make sure you're thinking along the way in the transaction process to keep everything documented, because you may not imagine it, but you might need it later.
Right. It might not be that easy to do initially, but once you get into a rhythm, once you as a broker or as an agent create a standard operating procedure to say, this is how I do things. When I go out, I send out an email, meet you at this location. I go out and I take a picture of you as a prospective buyer in the property and say, here's how you're going to look in your new home. I'm emailing it to you so you can see how you're going to look in the property, but at the same time I'm creating a record of you being there. So later when you say, no, the broker never took me or the agent never took me to see that property, there it is.
So you never really know what's going to turn up as evidence. You know, another topic that you hear about often is people claiming that they've earned commissions in cases where they're not getting paid commissions. What's a scenario of that?
There's a couple of different scenarios that you can envision, and that was the second topic that we wanted to discuss, which is if you have and normally you have a transactional broker arrangement. If as a broker you are in that situation and you wind up saying not being the broker anymore, your exclusive listing agreement were to expire, then the seller winds up selling the property to the buyer that you had brought into the mix. And you say, well, wait a minute, you've done this outside of, you waited until my listing agreement expired, you did this outside of the agreement, and now you're kind of cheating me on the commission. So what do? You have to prove later as the broker that you were what we call the procuring cause. That if it hadn't been for you as the broker, the buyer would have never gotten together with the seller. So how do you prove that? Again, documentation. If you have something on your calendar, if you have photos, if you've got emails, then you can show that you as the broker or as the agent, introduced the prospective buyer to that seller. Then your listing agreement expires, and the seller waits for that to happen and then contacts the buyer or vice versa. You're able to then assert your rights and say, I brought this prospective buyer to the mix before the expiration of that contract.
So it really still comes back to the same two things. It comes down to education, knowing what's right, what's wrong, and what your responsibilities are, and documentation so you can prove that you did everything you were supposed to do and the proper agreements were in place.
Right. And on the education point, sometimes it's not a bad idea for brokers or for agents to get out in front of that, to lean a little bit forward in the saddle and speak to somebody like me and say, you do real estate litigation, you see this stuff in court when it goes wrong. How can we avoid those situations? Where are our limits? What maybe should we do that we're not doing? What can we think about doing that can think sort of outside of the box? And how can we create some internal standard procedures or a way of doing something so we avoid problems and avoid getting dragged into litigation? Or if we do, we're at least in the best possible situation to defend ourselves or to be extracted out of it.
Right. And I mean, you're an attorney that's really involved in this stuff and really out there to use your information is out there.
Yes.
I know you've done a lot of instructional videos that would benefit realtors above and beyond the regular training that they get. So please take a moment, tell us how they could reach you, how they could watch your videos, and stay on top of this kind of stuff.
DavidSteinfeld.com. That's my law firm's website, and on that site you'll find all of my background information, all of my contact information, as well as a series of videos on business law, the litigation process, and more importantly for this program and for this audience, real estate litigation. I have a whole series of videos now coming out that come out once a month that are on all aspects of real estate, of commercial, residential, brokers, how to deal with brokers, and for homeowners and property owners, what brokers do and what they don't do.
And I think anything that can keep you out of court is worth spending the time invested.
Yeah, to me, that's generally the right way to treat people. Is that of course, as litigators are happy to go into court. That's what we do. That's what I do as an expert in business litigation law in the state of Florida. But if I can help someone to avoid going to court, or at least make it more possible for them to win in court, then I've done better by that person. That's the right way to treat people.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for coming in today. We have to do this again soon.
Yes, thank you very much.
Pleasure.